This is the macaroni and cheese demonstration video. Cooking principles. 1. Pasta cookery. Pasta types: macaroni, spaghetti, noodles, stuffed pasta, and fancy shapes. Let's take a brief moment to go over the different types of pasta. First category is macaroni, otherwise known as hollow tubes. Probably the best known example of this type of pasta is elbow macaroni. Other examples might include penne and ziti. Macaroni is pasta that is round with a hole in the middle, and the variety is almost endless. It can all be cut into any length, from thin slices to long tubes. The second type of pasta is spaghetti. Spaghetti is the general term for solid rod form of pasta. Round rods may be made in different diameters, ranging from fettuccine, the smallest, up to vermicelli, spaghetti, to spaghettoni, the largest. Solid rods may be made in an oval shape too. The third type of pasta is noodles, otherwise known as flat ribbon products. These can be fine or narrow, medium or wide, or broad. The most famous example of this type of pasta is linguine. Now, some may be extra long or folded. Fettuccine actually means ribbons in Italian, a descriptive word for many of these flat shapes. All of these flat shapes can be made curly on one side or both sides, and the largest one of all of this group is known as lasagna. The fourth type of pasta is stuffed pasta, otherwise known as filled pastas. They're usually pasta dough that's shaped around a filling and then boiled. Stuffed pastas come in a variety of different fillings and shapes. The most popular variety of stuffed pasta is the ravioli. Ravioli usually entails spooning meat or cheese-based fillings onto a sheet of pasta, topping it with a second sheet, sealing it, and cutting it. This pasta is also nicknamed pillow pasta. Another example of stuffed pastas is the mezzaluna, which translates into half moons. They are a semicircle type of pasta that usually contains a filling made up of vegetables and ricotta cheese. And another example of a stuffed pasta is the tortellini, which is usually a small ring-shaped pasta traditionally stuffed with a combination of ground meat and cheese. The last type of pasta is fancy shapes, otherwise known as specialty products, and the possibilities of its shape and size is unlimited. An example of this might be alphabets, which are letter-shaped pasta, farfalle, which is bow tie pasta, conchiglie, which is seashell pasta, and fusilini, which is a curly pasta pushed out through an extruder. Another part of pasta cookery is pasta volume. All pasta expands twice their size. Let's take a look at a side-by-side comparison. On the left, you see the original dried macaroni product. On the right, you see the cooked version. The cooked version has swelled up twice its size due to the amount of boiling water it absorbed while cooking. It also has changed in color because the transparent water has made the dark yellow color become slightly off-white. This is an important tip to know. So if your dish or recipe calls for a certain volume of pasta, you always cook half that amount, knowing it will double in size. A third part of pasta cookery is pasta cooking time. Depends on size and type. Probably the most difficult principle to be learned by beginning cooks is knowing when pasta has cooked long enough. Cooking times will depend upon the thickness of the pasta product or on the brand. And if the pasta is to be combined with another ingredient and then cooked further, such as a casserole or a baked macaroni, the recommended cooking time should be reduced by 1/3. And the most satisfying method to tell if pasta has been cooked long enough is through taste testing. The last part about pasta cookery is al dente, to the tooth or tender yet chewy. Learning from the Italians, we say cook until it's al dente. This means your pasta is tender yet chewy. When tasted, it is under the tooth. I usually check with a fork, and if the fork can easily go through it, it might mean it's too mushy. You need to have a little resistance to the fork. Pasta should have a little bit of chew to it. If the pasta is mushy, no one will want to eat it. Cooking principle number 2, milk cookery. Milk burns or scorches easily. Recommended procedures for heating milk is to use a double boiler and maintain low heat. This will prevent scorching of the proteins that like to settle on the bottom and stick and scorch. However, if a regular saucepan is being used, milk should be heated over low heat. This method will take longer than a double boiler, but if the temperature is low enough, scorching can be avoided. Also, constantly stirring the milk will help prevent the protein within the milk from settling down on the bottom and burning. Second part of milk cookery is milk is easily curdled. As temperature of milk rises, bacterial growth increases rapidly, forming lactic acid, which is a characteristic of souring milk. Also, there are certain ingredients that can cause milk to curdle. By adding things like absorbic acid, otherwise known as lemon juice, milk would separate and curdle. When milk is heated, a scum layer forms on the top. This milk scum consists of coagulated protein. It may be removed by skimming it with a spoon, but the surface will soon be covered again, and you will be removing protein from your recipe. A better way is to prevent this from forming. Constantly stirring is the key. Cooking principle number 3, using flour as a thickener, roux. A roux is a thickening agent made by cooking together flour and fat. Usually the flour and fat are equal parts. You need to add the flour slowly in order to prevent lumps. Then, liquid is added a little at a time, constantly stirring to keep the mixture smooth. To a beginning cook, it may seem that 3 hands would be an advantage when adding and stirring the liquid. Some recipes might call for the warming of the milk, but warming of the liquid might cause the flour to lump up further, so adding cold milk to the roux is best. Make sure you're consistently stirring, and when all the milk has been added, you cook over low heat, constantly stirring until the desired thickness has been achieved. Only with heat will the starch granules swell up with the liquid, causing the thickening to happen. Nutrition. Pasta, macaroni. Carbohydrates, enriched with vitamin B and iron. Carbohydrates are responsible for supplying the body with energy, sparing protein, and assisting the utilization of fats. B vitamins help the body turn carbohydrates into energy, help with normal growth and development of the body, maintain good appetite and normal digestion, and is essential for the proper functioning of your nervous system. Iron. Iron is needed to help build hemoglobin in the red blood cells, to help transport oxygen and carbon dioxide, preventing nutritional anemia. Cheese sauce. Calcium, protein, fat, phosphorus, and vitamin A. Calcium is responsible for forming strong bones and teeth and maintaining and repairing the skeleton, maintaining muscle, tone, normal heartbeat, and healthy nerve functions, and aiding normal blood clotting. Protein. It is essential for building muscle, repairing all types of body tissue, regulating body processes, forming antibodies to fight infection, and supplying your body with energy. Fat. Fat helps protect your body and insulate body parts such as major organs, supplies energy to your whole body, transports fat-soluble vitamins such as A, D, E, and K, and supplies your body with essential fatty acids needed for functioning. Phosphorus. The main function of phosphorus is the formation of bones and teeth. It is also needed for the body to make protein for growth, maintenance, and the repair of cell and tissues. Vitamin A is needed for normal growth and formations of bones and teeth, for maintaining normal vision, resisting infection by keeping your skin and lining layer of your body healthy. Ingredients. First, the ingredients for the macaroni. Large amount of cold water. Cook the pasta in a large amount of rapid boiling water to allow the starch granules enough room to swell. 1 milliliter of salt. The addition of salt is important to achieving a pleasant tasting pasta product. Also, adding salt will help bring the water to a rapid boil faster. 175 milliliters of macaroni. Macaroni is the pasta product we are choosing to use in our dish today. It has a hollow tube in the center, which is perfect for absorbing our sauce, adding more flavor to every bite. It is often nicknamed elbow macaroni because of the resemblance to the body part. Small amount of margarine for greasing casserole dish. It is important when choosing an oil to grease a pot. You choose a flavor that is similar to the dish. Margarine is being used in the cheese sauce, so that it is the fat we are choosing today. Next, the ingredients for the cheese sauce. 25 milliliters of margarine. Margarine will help add flavor to our cheese sauce, but it is also an important part in making a roux. A roux is a mixture of equal parts flour and fat that we use to help thicken our cheese sauce. 25 milliliters of flour. Flour is the second ingredient used to create a roux, which is responsible for thickening our cheese sauce. Traditionally, all-purpose flour is used for a roux because it contains enough starch in the flour. Starch is important because it expands and gelatinizes while absorbing the liquid like a sponge. This is what creates the thickening action. 150 milliliters milk. Milk adds extra nutrition to our cheese sauce by providing calcium and vitamin D. A white sauce is traditionally made from both a white roux and milk combined together. This is known also as a bechamel sauce. Bechamel sauce is one of the mother sauces in French cuisine. 1 milliliter salt. Salt enhances natural flavors found within the recipe. In our cheese sauce, it'll help bring out the sharpness of the cheddar. Half a milliliter of pepper. Pepper is a spice that, when added, helps season our food, adds a little bit of warmth to your palate, and helps add a little bit more flavor. 125 milliliters grated cheddar cheese. Cheese is the main flavor for our sauce today. We're using a medium cheddar, which has been aged slightly longer than a mild one, has a little bit more flavor, but not as sharp or distinctive as a strong cheddar. This type of cheese is very good for melting. These are all the ingredients for the macaroni and cheese. Equipment. For this recipe, you will need a casserole dish, large saucepan with lid, dry measures, small measures, liquid measure, metal spatula, wooden spoon, metal fork, colander, grater, metal pie plate, small saucepan with lid, rubber spatula, hot mat, oven mitts, wax paper, and finally, a lifter. Table setting. The table setting you will need for the macaroni is a placemat, a luncheon plate, a fork, a napkin, and a water glass. These are all the dishes that you need to set the table for your macaroni and cheese lab. Method. Bachette stands for the beginning steps that you need to do at the start of your lab. B stands for books and bags. They should be away either at the back of the classroom or under your table. A stands for apron, which you need to put on to help protect your clothing. S stands for sleeves. You need to roll them up past your elbows. H stands for long hair that touches the shoulders that needs to be tied back, or hats that need to be removed. C stands for chairs that should be tucked under your table and out of your way. H stands for hands that should be washed properly for 30 seconds using hot water and soap. E stands for equipment, which you should be getting out as quickly as possible without wasting time. And T stands for the towels that you need to pick up. You need at least 2 dishcloths and 2 tea towels. Step 2. Use oven racks numbers 4 and number 5. Preheat oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit, 190 degrees Celsius. We not only cook our pasta in the pot, but we'll bake it in the oven as well today. So it is important that we preheat the oven so it's ready to go when we need to put our macaroni into the oven. Step 3. Lightly grease a casserole dish using wax paper and a small amount of margarine. Now, because our dish contains cheese, which is notorious for burning and sticking onto the dish, we need to grease it very well with a fat. We're using margarine today for 2 reasons. Number 1, the margarine is a flavor already found within the cheese sauce, so it should blend really well. But number 2, margarine can take super high heat really well in the oven, so it doesn't burn or discolor, changing our macaroni dish into a sort of slightly browned color. Therefore, margarine is the perfect fat to use to grease our dish. And my best tip for students is make sure you really get the margarine into the corners of the dish. That is the spot where I always find it sticks the most. Method for the macaroni. Step 1. Fill a large saucepan, the bottom of the double boiler, 2/3 full with cold water. Cover with a lid. Place over maximum heat. Bring the water to a rapid boil, large bubbles with lots of movement. Water will boil faster if the pot is covered and cooked over maximum heat. Now we cook pasta in boiling water for 2 reasons. 1, it helps it not stick together because the rapid boils help move the pasta around the pot quite a bit. But 2, we want the pasta to spend as little time in the pot because pasta has starch in it, and starch is really important that it helps make the sauce stick to the pasta really well. If it spends too much time in the water, the starch slowly releases all into the water and doesn't stay on the pasta. Now remember, a pro tip, 1, lifting the lid to check to see if it's boiling. Make sure you lift the lid away from yourself so the steam flows away from your body and doesn't steam burn your arm. Also, remember, a big rapid boil means big breaking bubbles on the top of the surface. Step 2. Add salt for flavor. Adding salt adds additional flavor to your pasta, but it also helps bring your water up to a rapid boil faster if you've added it before. Now, Italians have a phrase that water should be as salty as the sea when cooking pasta. You don't have to be that salty. Today's recipe, 1 milliliter is just fine. Step 3. Gradually add macaroni so that the water keeps boiling. Helps maintain the temperature of the water and helps prevent clumping or sticking of the pasta. Putting the dry pasta slowly into the boiling water so that the water continues to boil. It's a very important step because that way the pasta is not sticking together. We are not using oil in our water. Oil, yes, would help coat the pasta and prevent it from sticking together, but it makes the sauce not stick to the pasta and actually slides off like a slip and slide. So we can do the same thing by just adding it slowly and keeping the rapid boil from happening. We want to make sure that the temperature stays the same high temperature so that way it cooks a shorter amount of time and we keep that starch on the pasta and not flowing into the water. Also, if you dump all the pasta in all at once, you're more likely to splash the hot water back onto your hand and burn yourself. So go slowly, and at the end, give your pasta a quick stir and make sure it's not sticking to the bottom. Step 4. Cook while stirring occasionally until al dente, tender but chewy, tender to the tooth, not soft and mushy. Can also test for doneness by cutting with a fork against the side of the pot. It should cut easily. Now, one thing to remember is that our pasta product is going to be further cooked in the oven with the sauce. And so in this case, we don't want to quite reach al dente. We want to stop the cooking process slightly before that happens. And then we know that the rest of the time spent in the oven will finish the pasta off. So what I usually do is I cut the pasta along the side of the pot, but for my demonstration, I will cut it on a wooden spoon so the camera can see it a little bit easier. The fork should have to work a little harder to get through the pasta. It shouldn't just quickly slide through. If it slides through, it might be at al dente or slightly overdone. It should have to work a little bit at it. Step 5. Drain macaroni in a colander. Rinse if desired. Rinsing pasta results in the loss of vitamin B because it is a water-soluble vitamin. Plus, rinsing does not allow the sauce to cling to the pasta because you are removing the starch that helps hold and absorb the sauce. I would only recommend rinsing the pasta if your cheese sauce is not ready to have it combined together and go into the oven. If you are delayed, I would suggest rinsing the pasta only to stop the cooking process from happening. Hot pasta sitting in the colander actually keeps cooking, and we want to stop it so that it's not quite al dente yet. Remember, we want to do that in the oven. So rinse with cold water until the steam stops steaming off the pasta. When you're ready to combine it with sauce, I would re-warm it up again with some hot water. That way it would help the sauce combine a little bit better with the pasta. But remember, rinsing the pasta loses vitamin B and that lovely starch that makes the sauce stick. Next, the method for the cheese sauce. Step 1. Grate cheese onto a metal pie plate. Now, the reason why we use a pie plate is to help protect our countertop from the grater pushing around as you grate the cheese. Also, it gives the cheese a place to fall into and collect. Now let's talk about the cheese grater. The side we want to use is the one that has a large circle on it. That's usually the best one to use. Sometimes your grater might have a side that looks like it's been punched out by a nail. That's actually for spices like cinnamon sticks and cloves. This side with a slice in it actually slices cheese or fruits or vegetables like a mandolin. That way you can make things like scalloped potatoes. That's what that side is for. And if you have on another side that has small circles, that's for usually hard cheeses like a Parmesan. We want to use the large circle side. When I start to grate the cheese, it's really important you pay attention to what you're doing and where your fingertips are. The faster you go, the more likely you are actually going to cut your fingers, and it's so important to be paying attention and not talking to a partner beside you. When you grate cheese, always rotate the blocks. If you develop a sharp angle, you're probably more likely to accidentally nick or hit your fingers. Keep rotating the block as you go along. And when you come down to that last very end piece, the safest thing you can do is just gently push it through the cheese grater very, very slowly. And you can always just leave that piece if you're feeling uncomfortable. Remember, going slow means you have more control over where your fingers are and where the blades of the grater is. Once you guys are done grating your cheese, pull the grater up and try to get all the cheese out from inside the grater, and there you have it. The cheese is ready to be melted into the sauce. Step 2. In a small saucepan, melt the margarine over low heat. Number 2. Add the flour, stir into a smooth paste. The melted margarine and the flour paste is called a roux. Mixing flour with melted fat, making the roux, helps separate the starch granules in the flour. This will help prevent lumps from forming. We are going to make a roux. A roux is a classic French technique which is equal parts fat to flour. Gently melt the fat, in this case margarine, until it's fully in a liquid form. Then sprinkle carefully in the flour, constantly stirring so that we prevent lumps from forming. As the flour is put into the fat gently coats each of the starch granules, getting them ready to expand and absorb the liquid. Step 3. Gradually, a little at a time, add milk to the roux while stirring constantly. When half of the milk has been added, increase the heat to medium. Number 5. Continue adding the rest of the milk while stirring constantly. Stirring constantly will also help prevent lumps from forming in the sauce. The roux paste should be cooked on the heat long enough to help remove that raw flour taste, but not long enough that it will brown. This is a white roux in cooking terms. Now we're going to thicken it up using milk for a classic bechamel sauce. Slowly add the milk and stir constantly. As you do, the flour or starch will slowly absorb the liquid, thickening and thickening and thickening. Make sure you cook the sauce over the heat until it starts to just thicken. Make sure you stir constantly. We do not want to have lumps. Lumps are very difficult to get rid of and will float on the top of our sauce, essentially ruining it, giving it a curdled-like appearance. Step 4. Season with salt and pepper. Continue to cook, stirring constantly until the sauce has thickened. When all the milk has been added, the mixture will now be cooked over low heat and stirred continuously until thickened. Never leave a sauce standing over direct heat without stirring, as it sticks and scorches easily. Remember our milk cooking principles. Now, remember, we want to keep cooking until there's no raw taste of starch from the flour. This may seem unnecessary, and you may think you're overcooking the starch, but remember, constantly cooking until this happens will make a better product overall. When the sauce is thick enough to coat the back of the wooden spoon, you are ready to add your cheese. Step 5. When the sauce is thick, reduce heat to minimum or completely remove off the heat. Gradually add 3/4 of the grated cheese. Stir until the cheese is melted and the sauce is smooth. If the cheese is added at too high of a temperature, the sauce may curdle. Protein in the cheese will coagulate and cause the fat and solids to separate. If cheese sauce cooks for too long, the sauce may curdle. Now we want to add only 3/4 of the cheese because the rest of it is saved for the topping. Make sure you stir this constantly. The high protein content of the cheese will make sure that it tries to separate in the sauce. It also might try to float up to the top and cause a skin to form. And we want to make sure all that protein stays within our mixture because that's good nutrition we want to keep. Keep stirring until everything is well melted. My heat is off right now. If you're worried about your sauce being too high in temperature, take it off the heat onto a hot mat. Now take a look. It's coating my wooden spoon quite nicely. Looks like good melted cheese that you'd pour on nachos. That's a good cheese sauce. Step 6. Stir the macaroni into the sauce. Place into a greased casserole dish. When you go to add your pasta into the sauce, make sure that you don't try to dump it in all at once. Go a little slow. You don't want to accidentally splash some of the hot sauce onto your hand. Once it's in the pot, give it a good stir and coat all that macaroni with that lovely sauce. We want to make sure it goes into the tubes and that it's going to have a really great flavor with every bite. Remember, this might look differently depending on if you rinsed your pasta or not. If you didn't have to rinse your pasta, you still have all that lovely starch on the outside and it will stick to the sauce super well. If you did have to rinse your pasta, you might find that your sauce is sliding off the noodle a little bit. Try your best and make sure it's well combined. Then slowly pour this hot mixture into the prepared, already greased casserole dish that we did at the very beginning of our recipe. Make sure you use a rubber spatula to help get all the rest of that sauce out of the pan, and also use the rubber spatula to push the pasta into the corners of the casserole dish. That way it's all spread out evenly and you know it's going to have an even time baking in the oven. Step 7. Bake for 10 to 15 minutes. At school, bake until all the dishes are done, but if the dishwashing is taking longer than 15 minutes, reduce heat to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Make sure you're wearing oven mitts before you go to pop this casserole dish into the oven. Remember, safety first, we do not want to burn your hand. Also, always bake for the lower temperature first, 10 minutes, and then see where you're at. If you notice, again, your group is taking way longer to wash all your dishes, you can always lower the temperature at that point and keep it warm in the oven. This dish is best served when it's warm. Step 8. Top with the remaining cheese. Return to the oven and bake until melted. Now my dish is pretty much done. What I'm going to do is put a hot mat down to protect my countertop because remember, hot glass looks like cool glass. And then I'm going to add the remaining cheese that I saved at the beginning. It should be about 1/4 of the cheese you grated. Make sure it goes all over the top. And when you're ready, use your oven mitts and pop it back into the oven. When it's all melted, it should look like this. The yield for this recipe serves 2, serves 3 for a group of 3. Test for doneness. 1. Macaroni against the side of the saucepan with a fork. It should cut easily. 2. Taste test. It should be al dente, tender but chewy. 3. Macaroni doubles in size when cooked. 4. Macaroni changes from a yellow to an off-white pale yellow color. Standards. 1. Macaroni is al dente, tender but chewy. This is a hard standard to achieve because it means you have to boil your pasta till it's slightly underdone, meaning that you can almost cut it with a fork, but you really have to work at it. And then try to achieve the perfect al dente texture by baking it further in the oven. Hopefully you were able to do this and make sure that your pasta, it has a lovely chew and bite to it and is not mushy in the end. Students will often ask me how long this will take, and to be honest, every brand of pasta is different. I would always guess it will take anywhere from 6 to 10 minutes to achieve perfect al dente. You have to keep checking. That is the only way you'll be successful. 2. Cheese sauce is thick, smooth, and not curdled. If cheese sauce is overcooked or cooked at too high of heat, it will curdle and the fat in the cheese will separate from the solid. This was achieved because you made your roux very well by making sure you're constantly stirring the flour and you made sure everything was a smooth paste. And when you added your milk in slowly, you did it little at a time, making sure that the sauce had a chance to absorb slowly, making that really thick paste. And also when you added the cheese, you did so slowly and constantly stirring, making sure temperatures were low, thinking about that protein within the cheese and the milk Knowing that protein loves to try to separate out, forming that scum on the top, you kept stirring, you kept making sure everything was well mixed, and that made you have a successful cheese sauce. 3. Cheese topping has melted. This is achieved by making sure you put it back into the oven to make sure the cheese melted, that you didn't overcook it, causing the protein to really toughen and be super chewy on the top. We want to make sure the cheese has a very lovely, gooey kind of texture to it. Keep an eye on it in the oven. This could take anywhere from 1 to 5 minutes depending on how thick the layer of cheese on top is. 4. Served hot. This is an important step because you are eating in class today, and if your dishwashing is taking too long, you needed to remember to lower your temperature down to 350. Keep it warm in the oven and only melt the cheese when you're ready to serve, pretty much that last minute when you're setting up the table and getting ready to eat. This dish is best served warm and hot, not cold, because then the cheese has toughened and making it chewier and not as pleasant to eat. These are all the standards for the Macaroni and Cheese Lab. Let's take a look at my demonstration. I'm first going to start by dividing my macaroni and cheese dish in half, sharing it between 2 different luncheon plates, using my lifter to gently bring all that hot pasta out of the dish. Keep in mind that hot glass dish is super hot. Hot glass looks like cool glass, so always handle the dish with oven mitts and make sure it's sitting on a hot mat and not burning the countertop. All right, now let's take a look at our pasta. You can see here the noodles are definitely doubled in size, and they have a lovely off-white pale color. It slides really nicely in my fork, and I can tell it still has a little bit of give to it, which means it's chewy yet tender. The cheese is evenly melted and the dish is warm. You can see steam coming off it a little bit. Might be hard to see in the video, but it's there. That is a good macaroni dish. You can see I'm going to bring it up a little closer. Here's that noodle again. It's got a little bit of give to it. And again, it's tender yet chewy, that perfect al dente texture. This dish is so much more nutritious than a regular old box of instant macaroni and cheese. Not only did you learn about pasta cookery, but milk cookery as well. I hope you enjoyed making it as much as I did. Happy cooking, and thanks for watching.